me put this on mute. So the event I have with the Facebook guy or the Meta guy is now up to 360 people or something.
360. I feel very unpopular.
Oh,
What's happening?
yours is quite high, man.
Yeah, it's I'll send the numbers go up. We're doing okay. We're doing okay.
Because you were asking me what's the record.
Yes,
Record
yeah.
keeps going up.
It's hard to beat Facebook. I'll be honest. I mean, many companies and people have tried. Isaac. Uh,
Awesome. So people are joining like slowly and surely. We've got about 17 people live right now.
17. Very nice.
Yeah. And I think we'll start in about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, perfect.
Once it hits that 20 mark, because it kind of evens out at 20 at any given point. But yeah, looking forward to this. So I love having recruiters on because I get a lot of questions from people either trying to come to Dubai or just designers looking for work in general. So yeah, I think insights from talent scouts, recruiters are invaluable. That's why I
Thank
invited
you.
you on.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on, and it's my first time speaking in a fashion like this, so I'm quite excited myself.
I will be gentle.
Easy now. It's a Friday.
Okay, let's see. All right, so people that are coming on. Oh, thanks for joining, Isaac. So Isaac was asking how to find this, so I'm glad he's on.
Oh, great. And he said he had to beat the metro to be here. I hope he was running for the metro, running past the metro, should I say?
He's actually a designer based in Dubai.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah.
And Jade as
And
well.
we've got Jade. Jade, I'm a big fan of your work, so you're going to be on one of these very soon.
There we go.
And we've got Sean, work together at ENBD. I'm trying to see because it's not showing me which Sean. It just says LinkedIn user.
Yes, it doesn't.
All right, I think we can get this party started. Cool. Thanks, Asher, for coming on. So
Pleasure.
yeah, like I was saying, I love having these with talent scouts and recruiters because I think there's a lot we can learn from yourself, and there are a lot of designers looking for work right now globally. So it'd be great to get some insights from you about the do's and don'ts of a designer looking for work, and kind of some of the things you look forward to. I invite you all that are online to ask questions in the chat, and we'll put them up on the screen, and Asher will answer to the best of his ability, which will be more than enough because Asher is amazing.
Oh, I'm flattered.
So yeah, tell us about yourself, man. How did you get into recruitment? Where you from? How you liking Dubai so far?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the first question. How did I get into recruitment? Now, recruitment is one of those industries where no one particularly plans, or at least I didn't plan to go into recruitment. It's almost like an oil rig engineer. You kind of just fall into those sort of things. Most people want to be a pilot, a lawyer, etc., etc. So I always wanted to get into sales and speak with people. There's obviously a few options out there. You can kind of get into real estate. You can sell cars. But the way I kind of look at it is you should ideally sell what you enjoy, sell what you're passionate about. If I really loved houses, I'd sell houses. If I really loved cars, I'd sell cars. I like people. So in a way, as weird as it may sound, I sell people for a living. That's what I do. So
you're this close to being a pimp, bro.
Yeah, I'll get in there, maybe one day. So yeah, no, so that's more or less kind of why I was quite attracted to it. I did a few things before, kind of stayed in IT support, worked for like an event service business as well. But then I kind of found my way into recruitment after being recruited by someone else, which is again quite a popular story. You kind of get kind of shown through the process by a recruiter, and you end up kind of learning more about the industry and the potential there. So I kind of joined after that, and yeah, I've kind of enjoyed it ever since. Really enjoyed recruitment. So, and as probably everyone can tell from my very distinct accent, I'm from England, London, and I think that kind of covers me as a sort of basic overview.
Amazing, amazing. So, in terms of your decision to move to Dubai, how did that happen from London?
So I'll be honest, Dubai wasn't my first option. So
Ah,
when you're kind of looking around at places to move, because I was always keen on moving out of England and exploring the world, and finding a place which kind of serves me best. Um, the world gets very small very quickly. So after a while, you kind of look at the world and you see like Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Dubai. There's a few other places where expats tend to go.
yeah,
Then I kind of got to Singapore and Dubai. Those were like my two options. Singapore was like my main option, whereas like 80% of me
right.
wanted to go there, and then like Dubai was like kind of a backup in case Singapore didn't work out. But after doing a lot of research, Singapore during the previous events of the last few years is a lot more difficult to get into, um,
Oh, yeah.
and and age-wise as well. There's a lot more young people in Dubai as opposed to Singapore. So I kind of just thought, let me be a bit more open-minded to Dubai, even though I didn't really know much about it, and then decided to. I just literally came across a recruiter, and she helped me move to Dubai, and I moved very quickly. It was all in around a month. It was quite a quick decision.
That's amazing. And what do you look for? So you work as a talent scout. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So talent scout. So essentially, my day-to-day job is finding the best talent for companies, varied in industry, and I tend to specialize in both design, which is obviously why we sort of connected, and development, and particularly within the front end. Every now and then, you'll most recruiters tend to go out of patch every now and then, but predominantly, I tend to stay in the
Yeah,
front end. It's where I'm more comfortable, and where people are the most friendly.
yeah. I think your analogy of selling people is bringing back
Yeah,
to reality.
I saw a few comments in the corner of the screen. I was doing my best to ignore them, but one day later, I'm not sure if I could hold that title. I'll stick to Talent Scout for now.
Yeah, yeah. It's more PC.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you're looking for talent, I'm guessing this is a global search.
Yes, yeah. So when I was in London, I was doing recruitment for approximately just over 2 years, working for quite a big corporation, and then but back then it was kind of recruiting for people in London, for companies in London. So everyone I was speaking to is more or less in London, for the most part. Whereas now my job's opened up an incredible amount, and it's part of the reason why I moved here as well. Because now I get the pleasure of speaking with people from all over the world. So in 1 week I can speak to people, 1 day even. I can speak to someone from like Russia. I can speak to someone from Lebanon. I can speak to someone from England. I can speak to someone from Germany. More or less, most countries within 2 or 3 hours of our time zone. So now it's completely global, and most people, I'm convincing people to move to Dubai quite a lot, and or Saudi. It's kind of the main countries that I recruit for.
Yeah, it's Saudi. I think that we'll
Yeah.
get there.
Oh
Because
yeah, I'd love
think,
to.
yeah, good luck. Good luck with arguing against that one because I heard a lot of people, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
So in
we'll
terms
get
of
there.
scouting for talent, like what do you look for? How do you decide between this designer or the next, right? When you're reaching out, because you can't reach out to every designer you see. So what are those things you look for?
So I think I'm going to use a weird analogy here. Kind of like if you were to ask me how do I make an amazing steak, it doesn't start from cooking it. It starts from buying the steak. So
Yeah, quality of the meat. Yeah,
exactly. So what, and that's like half the job. So what I kind of mean by that, bringing it back to recruitment, and not making everybody hungry, is the conversation with the hiring manager is probably is more or less one of the more important conversations you'll have in the recruitment process. You have to really
right.
understand what the hiring manager is looking for. A lot of the time is relevant experience. A lot of the time is like the maybe particular sort of software design software, and maybe it's like they prefer someone from a certain like the years of experience, for example. So there's a
Yes.
lot of different variations. So usually I get some form of brief. The more detailed, the better, and the more accurately that I can sort of recruit. And also, what matters is someone's situation. For example, a lot of the time, and whether it's agreed with or not, a 3 months notice period is a lot less attractive than 2 months or 1 month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, obviously that's a lot of the time out of your control, and sometimes a lot of the time companies don't mind if the project that they're working on or the role is a bit more of a patient one, but sometimes that is more unattractive too.
So does that mean when designers are signing contracts, can they negotiate how long the notice period is going to be? Because I know some of these are based on the company policy. Like, have you seen
Yeah,
designers negotiate shorter notice periods?
I personally haven't known. Yeah, personally, I've never seen that happen. It just yeah, most of the time it just kind of just comes with the sort of company.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we've got a question here from Mohammed. What do you think
Mm.
is more important, experience or portfolio for designers?
That's a good question. Very very good question actually, Mohammed. I would say, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on which one you have. Is I'd say experience. Now, portfolio can trump experience, but you can have a really good portfolio, but a lot of companies won't give you the chance because you haven't worked in a design environment for long enough. So I'd say they're both extremely important, but I say having experience is great. Is more important overall.
Right. And what advice would you give to designers starting out then?
Well, it's difficult because it's like I'm sure you've seen memes on the internet where companies are looking for people with like 5 years experience, but it's like an intern job. So
Mm,
like it's kind of like a catch-22. So I get it. It's extremely difficult. Now, like whilst I say experience is more important overall, you need both, and you can still work on your portfolio. I'd always say optimize. First of all, have your portfolio up to date at all times. I think everyone at every single level, when it comes to design, should always update their portfolio and CV. And outside of design, update your CV at all times. If because let's just say, for example, you're working on your CV and sorry, let's say you don't work on your CV and a project comes up, then like you're doing a project and you kind of forget about it after like a year, and then you have to go back and write about it. It won't be the same quality. It just won't. So I'd
yeah,
always just say keep everything completely up to date. You have to be persistent. We live in a not only a globalized economy, but we also live in a very busy market. So like most hiring managers are getting loads of CVs directly, and then they have maybe they're working with 2 or 3 recruitment companies, and they're sending them CVs. So they're seeing a lot of CVs. So you should always try and optimize your portfolio. End of the day, your job is UX design or UI design, most likely for listening to this. So you want to make sure that your CV has a good user experience, and always optimize it. Probably similar to what you do in an application, which in an ideal world is probably easier for a designer to make their CV look nice than a back-end C# developer.
absolutely. And the quality of your CV actually, a lot of the times, speaks to the quality of the designer. Because I've seen some
100%.
designer CVs that don't have a great eye for typography, color usage, and spacing, or like all the things you'd expect a designer to apply in their work. They don't apply in their CV.
No, 100%. I've seen, obviously, I see a lot of CVs. It's more or less
Yeah.
what I look at 24/7. And unfortunately, you get some design CVs which almost look like they were purely done in HTML or
Mm,
like a notepad, like with like there's no design to it, there's no flow to it, there's no formatting, and like unfortunately, it's a very competitive marketplace. So your CV has to be better than someone else's, or you have to be a better fit. So as ruthless as it may sound, you have to always optimize your CV, and make it look better. Put a lot of time and effort into it.
yeah.
Most people spend years either doing different courses to improve their coding or going to university, spending loads of money there, all to not spend some time on your CV. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a question here from Isaac, which is one that I actually get a lot, especially when we're talking about relocation, right?
Mhm.
So is it easier for a designer to get a job in Dubai whilst they're here, like on a visitor visa? or they can be anywhere in the world and have equal opportunity with designers that are already here?
Um, Personally speaking, because I can only really talk about my own personal experience, I don't if a company is open to relocating people, I focus on finding the best talent. I don't really discriminate based on where you're from. So I tend to my search tends to be fairly broad anyway.
Okay.
So I'd say it doesn't really matter that much. But at the same time, there is sometimes where I'll just do like a Dubai search, or at least start my search based on people in Dubai, because
Yes.
it tends to be the quickest and easiest, right? And the notice
Yes.
periods might be a bit quicker. You can start quicker. So technically speaking, yes, you may be open. You may get more opportunities come to you. Like I may come to you faster, for example, and I'm sure other recruiters would. So I'd say yes, overall it is better, but like I wouldn't if it's completely out of your way. It's not impossible to get a job remotely at all. It's definitely possible. I've relocated many people already, and I've only been here for a few months.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So which countries have you relocated people from so far?
Egypt was my most recent one. I've got someone coming from Lebanon, another person from Egypt. I'm working on someone who'll be coming from the UK. So yeah, those are the main countries. Russia, there's someone from Abu Dhabi. He was a Spanish guy. Helped relocate. So yeah, there's been a few people.
This is an interesting question from Sharon. How do you measure someone's years of experience in like a small time frame, like an hour, and make a decision to drop the person or hire them?
So how do you measure someone's years of experience in a small time frame like an hour? Well, me myself, a lot of my job is like a first stage qualification. So in all honesty, it's not my complete job to do that. Now, usually I set up my meetings for about half an hour, 45 minutes, like as like a first stage of introductory. So that conversation typically, I find out a bit about yourself. I
Yeah.
usually start by saying, what are you looking for, and why are you looking?
Yeah.
Then I tell them about the opportunity, and then we'll have a back and forth about their experience, and then yeah, and then more or less, um, I'll put them forward for the role and help them through the process. Now, I think a part of it is obviously a portfolio if you are in design, assuming you're in design, Sharon. So a portfolio does help. Sometimes there is design task as well, so that can help. And then also, obviously, it is on your CV, so you can kind of see how much experience someone has. And when you have a conversation with someone and you ask certain questions, unfortunately, I didn't get to sit in as many interviews as I would probably like, because then I maybe be able to answer a bit more accurately. Um, but yeah,
I can answer from that perspective.
yeah, of course.
So there's one question that I rely on the most to kind of judge your experience level. Because even someone, let's say for argument's sake, someone that has 1 year experience as a designer versus someone with 3 years, the one with 3 years might not have as much experience as the guy with 1 year. Simply because the guy with 3 years of experience, if he's worked in larger organizations where they're an individual contributor who's focused on like one task with one product or one feature, and with a larger team, your responsibilities are a lot less, right? So you don't do any of the discovery, any of the research. You don't talk to any of the customers. Or you're focused on simply delivering the task that the product owner will give you. Versus maybe a designer with 1 year's experience who's worked in a smaller team that's opened him up to doing all those other things, right? So they end up being a much more well-rounded designer simply because of the environment they've worked within that 1 year. And I know I have a friend who transitioned to design like a year ago, and she joined a team where it's exactly like that. She does a lot of the stuff within their team, like a lot of the research, the discovery, the UX, versus where she was before. She wasn't doing any of that. She was focused on delivering one specific part of the job. So when you have a conversation with them and you ask one question, like, tell me about a problem you solved, tell me about a problem you had as a team and how you solved it. Just that simple question, those two people will answer very differently, right? So you might end up leaning towards the person with 1 year's experience, but that 1 year of experience, they grew so much more than the person that's been working for 3 years.
Well, there we go.
So we've got another question here. This was a good one. So in terms of length of CV, like
Good
what is
question.
golden
Very good
rule?
question. Now, I think I believe most people would say one page, but it depends on your experience.
Oh,
Someone like yourself, for example,
yeah,
he's got
I can't.
yeah, exactly. It'd be a lot more difficult, and honestly, it'd probably be more detrimental for you to have a short CV, for someone like
Exactly.
yourself. So, but say someone like me, he's a bit more spring than Betsy over here, then maybe my CV would be shorter because I have less years experience overall. So I think when you get to a certain point, definitely it's completely fine to have a longer CV. Um, but if you are at the beginning of your career, let's just say you're like 2, 3, 4 years in, there's probably not that much of a need to to have a 2 page or 3 page CV. You're probably just like you're probably just not as precise as you should be when wording your CV. So it varies. For example, also I used to work in the contract space in London quite a bit, and if you're a contractor, you're going to have a lot of jobs. Then it's almost impossible to have a one-page CV. So overall, if you can do one, because it is easier, but two is completely fine. I don't think there's a complete it's wrong at all.
And do talent scouts and hiring managers actually read the CVs,
Oh
or do
yeah.
they browse through and just look at like the salient points?
I think in terms of like to start have a conversation in order to get someone's attention as an talent scout or recruiter, which are essentially the same thing. Then we probably have a quick look and then we're like, okay, this person looks good. Maybe look at some keywords and then have the conversation and dig into more. But before sending a CV, I think any half decent recruiter should most definitely read a CV before sending a CV and have a good conversation about the whole entire CV and kind of break it down 100%. You'd hope.
Amazing. Another great question here. How do you sell the Middle East to a designer who could go to Europe or the States? All right.
Ooh,
So
now we're
States is
talking.
yours, man.
Now we're
So
talking.
now
Okay,
we're talking about Dubai and Saudi. So how do you sell those? Give us your
great,
pitch.
great question. Great question. So now I wouldn't tell everybody to come here. It's probably my first point. I think, and I actually stole this quote from a guy called Andrew Henderson. He's got like a company which helps other companies move country. He said, "Go where you're treated best," and this is one of the things that motivated me to move in the first place. Is I didn't feel like moving up in my career, England, for example, was the best place for me. Now it is for some people, but for myself and kind of what I want, it's not. It wasn't the best place. So what would I say to people? Like Europe's a great place for a lot of people. It's a very free for the most part, of course, depending on where, because Europe is a massive place. But kind of a lot of your major cities are quite free, and there's a lot of potential. It's a great place to network. But the Middle East is quite unique in multiple ways. Not only is it very modern, and I can speak from experience. I guess the services here in my opinion, are a lot better. You can get anything at
Yeah.
any time, whereas England goes to sleep. Dubai never,
Yeah.
ever sleeps, and I'm sure you can vouch for that too.
Amazing. Yeah.
You can go shopping in a mall in 1 in the morning, whereas you can't do that in England. So you do get benefits like that. Also, of course, and it kind of goes without saying, some of the tax advantages. When you look at a lot of the West and a lot of Europe in general, you're kind of looking at places where you can work hard, but you're going to get taxed quite heavily. And a lot of the time, you may still have to pay for your medical care, depending on your country, or at least get sponsored by a company. And those places may not even keep you safe. So, like for example, I know London's probably not the safest place in the world. Is it that dangerous? I don't think so. But in comparison to Dubai, it's non-comparable. So, the Middle East, you're getting somewhere where it's very modern. It's very forward. It's getting more forward thinking. So depending on where in the Middle East, but you should be fine with most lifestyles. Um, you're in a place where the tech space is booming. They're investing so much money into the tech space. They have a lot of money over here,
Yeah.
and the money spreads. Most people here are extremely happy. We're in an extremely multicultural place, which is exciting in itself. Um, and of course, career-wise, you can. I personally think you're at least 1.5 times. This is a complete fake statistic that I'm making up, but at least 1.5 times better, kind of moving forward, not only financially, but just in your experience. I think people tend to move up quite a lot quicker here. I mean, and it's almost untapped because it's so new. Um, it's a great place to be. I could get more specific when it comes to Dubai and Saudi, but as like a general overview of the Middle East, I think if for most people, a lot of people, if you're career driven, you want to make some good money, then I think Dubai is a great place to be with amazing opportunities.
Yeah, let's talk about Saudi a little bit. So it might not be a market that a lot of people are familiar with because it only recently just really started opening up, even just from a tourism perspective, right? So what can you tell us about the Saudi market? What kind of jobs are hot there right now? What can people
Yeah,
expect if they're kind of getting
yeah.
into
So the Saudi market job wise is a little bit behind than Dubai. So it's almost like Dubai maybe 10 years ago, roughly speaking. And what I mean by that is Dubai used to have to throw around extremely high salaries to get people to come over here, and to get foreign talent essentially.
right?
Whereas now, for example, the opportunities which offer housing are a lot lower than they used to be. The salaries are probably a little bit lower, relative to inflation and everything. Um,
Right.
because Dubai has now built itself, it's growing at an incredible rate. So it's now made itself a location in itself. Like I would be here if it wasn't that hot and sunny and it was by a beach because it's still amazing in itself. It's easy to get people over here now. Whereas Saudi, it still has it definitely still has negative connotations. I think it's fair to say. I think still it's not quite as um, built up as Dubai. That's debatable, but in like the entertainment sense, let's say, it's not as appealing, and they still do have stricter rules. So the Saudi is a little bit behind, but they do offer higher salaries and a lot cheaper living. I believe it's
Okay.
around 30% cheaper to live in Saudi. You can get rent for a lot cheaper. Things tend to be a bit cheaper, and the salaries tend to be a lot higher again because they have to attract people over. So
Yeah.
usually you have to throw some money around, and the economy of Saudi is a lot bigger than Dubai. They have a lot more money. I'm sure you've seen things from Saudi 2030. They're building a
Yeah.
whole load of new things, and within Neom, there's the line, and there's a few other projects that they're working on.
Yeah.
So I think Saudi is the future. As long as if they if they put everything off, there will be the future. I think it's again a very safe place to live, a great place if you've got a family, for example, and you want to make a nice investment plan for the future, whether you want to stay here for 2 years, maybe you fall in love with it. I think it's a fantastic place to be. But again, it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend Saudi for everybody, and I tell people that straight away, because I'm working quite a few roles in Saudi. But the job market's booming. A lot of new roles are being developed. A lot of new companies are moving over there, and I think very similar to Dubai. If you move there, your life will be pretty set up as long as you play your cards right.
Cool. That is a really good answer. Um, we've got some answers questions from the. Let me put one up. So this is from Atsurai Freddy, my namesake. Do you sometimes recruit from other design facets like motion graphics, animation? Like, what's your focus?
That's a great name. So yeah, sometimes I do recruit in other fields. Usually we how recruitment works for those who don't know. You usually try and pick up a client, or maybe your company will give you a client. The roles will come out of that. Um, and usually in a company like that I work for, like Discovered, we usually have specialists in most fields when at least when it comes to anything tech, and then maybe a little bit of sales here and there as well. Um, but every now and then there's like, for example, we don't have a set motions graphics design specialist, but someone like myself, or there's another guy called Harry. He's more than suited enough to work a motions graphics design role. So yes, you may see, if you are connected with me, you'll definitely see me posting about motions graphics designers. I'm actually looking for one to hit me up.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Question from Daniel: is it better to be in Dubai when searching for roles? If yes, why? I think you touched on this a little
Yeah.
bit, but maybe just reiterate.
Yeah. So hi, Daniel. So I'd say overall, yes, it is better to be in the Barman searching for roles, because how we tend to do our searches, we do search by location a lot of the time. I don't leave it open to the whole entire world. Usually, I start with like a United Arab Emirates search, and then maybe go out from there. So if, in theory, you'll come across people, recruiters in Dubai quicker. So sure. in theory, you can change your location on LinkedIn anyway, so you get the same result. I'll say overall yes, but I don't think it's detrimental. I relocate people all the time. I'm looking for the best talent for a company. I'm not trying to find people in a certain place a lot of the time,
So
most of the time anyway.
this is an interesting one from Carabo. So he's basically saying he doesn't understand why senior designers tend from moving away from the day-to-day actual hands-on work. And he's leading a business unit, but he's involved in every phase. So when you see designers moving into design leadership, what are some of the qualities you look for? Like, do you look for people that are very hands-on still, or do you look for people that are now mature in their design leadership and they are more into the vision and the management rather than focusing on the nitty-gritties of the actual execution?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, then I would personally say you don't have to be like, let's just say you've had a career in design, for example, and you want to be a leader now. You want to get into management. If I'm understanding correctly, then you can move to being hands off and still be a very good and efficient leader, in my opinion. So if that's the question, if I'm reading that correctly, then you can I think you can be a good hands-off leader. A lot of designers still want to have an element of being hands-on. That's something I get asked more often than not. I don't think I've actually ever come across a designer who said they don't want to design anymore. So yeah, maybe a short answer, but
Yeah,
hopefully I've answered
I think it's
some.
yeah. It also depends what background the design leader is coming from, because there's some design leaders that are not designers, so they prefer to be hands off because they can't design better anything better than the team they have, right? So yeah, I think it probably depends where you are leaning towards as a design leader. Yeah, this is a good question. So salaries, this is something you guys hide on job posts. Really annoying, man.
Uh, um, I can only speak for myself now. I don't. For example, if I'm posting, I'll be very transparent. If I'm posting a job on LinkedIn for everybody to see, I don't put the salaries there 99%
Why?
of the time.
Why?
Because that's a good question. But I'll finish what I'm saying. I will come back to it. Uh, Politician. Uh, but when I'm messaging people directly, then um, then I usually put the salary. I'd say at least 70% of the time, maybe 80% of the time, I do put the salary there because it's just easier and people know what they're getting. I do prefer
Yeah.
transparency. But why I don't put it on the major post is because a lot of people will come across it. Now, I personally think sometimes people may see a salary who would be a good fit, and honestly, it's maybe not even too dissimilar to the salary they're on now, but that company is still an amazing fit for them. So I'd rather have that conversation through speaking rather than it just be completely transactional and it be just on the internet, just there for people to see and be put
Okay.
off when maybe and truly the role is a perfect fit for you. Maybe there may be some flex because you've hired people before. A lot of the time there is flex in the budget for the perfect candidate. So
Yes,
things
that's
are
true.
never stagnant. There's a reason why I have a job. It's not just um, posting things and putting out there. There's a level there's a human element to things, which means that I can flex. It means the candidate can flex, and it means the client can flex. So things do move around. Whether that be for a lower salary, maybe it's a mid developer role, and it's at 20K, for example, a month, dirhams, and maybe there's someone who's junior, maybe they'd be a good fit for the role, but maybe they'll see the post and there's a flex somewhere. So there's a lot of occasions where flexes can happen, whether that be for less or more money.
Yeah.
So that's why it's because a lot of the time I like to have a conversation before.
And what are the salary ranges for like mid designers and senior designers?
That's a very difficult question to answer because
That's the one he asked.
yeah, it's a big question. It's a very difficult question. I'll tell you why. It's because there is such a range, especially in Dubai, and in the Middle East in general. Whereas for example, London, for example, there's not that big of a flex, and I could probably answer that question quite easily when it comes to contract rates anyway. Um, but in Dubai, there's such a range that there is, and it's probably partially due to the geographical location. You get people from all
Yeah.
over the world, and people in different countries earn different amounts of money. For
Yeah.
example, salaries in London tend to be very high, and then maybe some of Eastern Europe they may not be as high, for example. So it's
No, yeah.
yeah,
Like
I
I've
wouldn't be able to
seen,
give you a blanket
jobs
statement.
for designers for like 3,000 or less even.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've seen some for 40,000 per month for senior design. So you're right, the range is massive, and it really comes down to the company you're applying for. But I would say, if we're going to put a number, I would say on average, for like mid and senior designers, 20K as a baseline would be, if you're trying to see like if an offer is a good offer, I would say 20K is like a baseline.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree with that. As a senior designer, again, it's not. This isn't me avoiding the answer. It's like asking me how much is coffee in Dubai. If you go to Dira, you can probably pick up a coffee for pretty cheap. Whereas if you're going to be next to the Burj and you want to have a nice view of the Burj and enjoy a coffee, that coffee may cost more than most meals.
Absolutely. Quick, why is the hiring time in Dubai so short? You can be hired within a few days, and on the other side, fired within a few days. Ouch.
Yes, good question, Isaac. So, why? I may not be able to answer. We'll leave that to the powers above who made the rules. But unfortunately, let's just say, for example, where I'm from in England, it's actually very difficult to find somebody. You tend to have like a period for like 3 months, where you may be a bit easier it may be easier to let you go, but here the rules are less. Very similar to America. America, you can kind of fire people pretty quickly and hire people pretty quickly. Whereas in England, this is a lot more of a regulated market. Dubai is very new; it doesn't have the infrastructure of a lot of these countries, so there's less regulated. And that's with recruitment. That's with a lot of different things. There's a whole lot less regulation here than the rest of the world, from my perspective.
Cool. Another question. We'll go to these quickly. So, question from Tra: any advice for entry level applicants without any
So,
experience?
um, it's a tough one. There's a few different options. You can do some like Upwork, for example, or Fiverr. Try and do some free work. Um, and maybe try and build your own thing. Maybe work with a front end developer. Just get something on your get a portfolio going at least. Um, Apply for junior roles. Now, again, I know a lot of these junior roles say 1+ years experience, so it's like kind of a catch-22, and it can be quite difficult.
Right.
It's difficult to break into the space. You can do things like optimize your LinkedIn. I've had a few people reach out to me, for example. And if your LinkedIn's not good, a lot of people just unfortunately will not give you the time of day. So you need to always optimize your LinkedIn, make sure it's up to date, make sure it looks good, make sure the about page. Even pay someone. There's people you can pay to help you if you can. If you're not in that position, then just look at someone who's similar to you, or maybe you want to be in 2 or 3 years, and just copy the LinkedIn, not word for word, of course, but how they lay it out and how they kind of sell themselves. So optimize your LinkedIn, and that goes with your CV and your portfolio, and then you're going to have to knock on a whole lot of doors. And it might be quite long. There'll be times where it feels horrible. You're getting ignored. You're getting ghosted. But eventually, hopefully, you'll get a job. And for some people that's immediate, and for some people I've heard some graduates even in England it takes years, unfortunately.
That's true.
And that,
So, we've got a question here from Noor. How do you handle candidates unqualified for the roles? Do you prefer the first one to inform them or let them keep up to date for feedback? I'm not actually getting this question. Do you get what she's saying?
how do you handle clients that are unqualified for the roles? I'm assuming does she mean clients or candidates? Do you prefer the first one?
Yeah, maybe Noor, can you rephrase the question because we can really get what you're trying to ask? That would be amazing, please. Question from Navjeet. This is a designer in my team, Asher, so don't poach him, please. No, actually, he left us. No, you can.
Uh,
You can poach him.
okay. In that case, I'll be in your inbox very soon, my friend.
So, what would a good LinkedIn profile look like, according to you?
So one that's filled out, a lot of people leave out a lot of information. For example, that even their job title is not up to date. Their display picture is not like clear. Usually just want a good headshot. To be honest, I want to update mine. I think I'm a bit more handsome than my display picture, so I want to keep
I
mine
would
updated
agree.
too. Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
I met you in
So
person, so I would attest to it.
there we go. So there we go. So I think my picture could do with some work myself. So that's something I could optimize. Make sure your picture is clear. Even I think it's called the header. the header, make sure that looks nice, especially again in the field of design. You can get a bit creative with it. If you work for a company, I personally think it's best to have the company header if your company does have one. Make sure your about page is precise, and you have just explain what you do, and have like a short sell of yourself. So again, keywords are very important. A lot of the time that we're searching on LinkedIn, we're doing keyword searches. So I'm not saying spam
Ah,
your about page with designer and UX 24/7, but definitely have some keywords in there because you will come up faster. It's how the algorithm works. That's definitely a good tip there. Um, if you do have courses, again, put your courses. Try and get recommendations of people you've worked with in the past. I
okay.
think that's really good, because if you do
Do
have
those work with SEO, or you guys actually look to read those recommendations?
we'll just look. If, for example, I see someone, let's just say I'm not sure about somebody, I'm like, hey, is this person good? But then I see all your managers in the past saying really good things and big paragraphs about you. Of course, that's something I cannot ignore. And I think this goes for any hiring manager. So I definitely say just essentially fill out your LinkedIn, and
Right.
everything that it has to offer. Use it all. Be active on LinkedIn. I know there's a few people here that are active on LinkedIn. Post regularly. Now, obviously, you may not post as much as someone like myself, but do a post every now and then. Maybe you can bring a post up to the top as well. I forgot what the formal word is for it, but at the top you can kind of almost tag your like best post up there. Maybe do
Yes,
some
the
posts about your
features.
design. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. So yeah, there's a
Yes.
few different things you can do.
Awesome. Question from Famida. So Famida is a designer based in the UK. Actually met her
Very
at
nice.
the bank I used to work with. Sup, fam? Thanks for coming on. Her question is: some companies in Dubai are notorious for conducting 360 interviews, 360 review. Outcome determines your future in the company. What are your thoughts on this? Would you consider such practice toxic breeding? Do you know what a 360 review
No,
is?
I
I'm not
don't.
familiar with it myself.
No,
Maybe
I'm not sure.
Amita, just give us an idea of what a 360 review is, and then we can better answer, because both of us have no idea what it is. Isaac is saying, that's true, Asher, about your display picture. He went and checked it out.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. The light is not flattering me right now. The sun's gone, but yeah, no, I thank you. I appreciate Isaac.
So this is a question I wanted to throw in there, because I think over past few years, I've always heard people saying recruiters are the worst. They ghost you all the time. Someone recently said that to me as well. They message recruiters, recruiters never get back to them. It gets really frustrating when you're trying to find a job. So, how would you defend yourself, Mr. Asher? Why do you
Okay.
go, if you ever do?
Is this? Am I in court? Okay, no, it's a good question and a fair question. Now, I think generally speaking, there's a massive disconnect between recruiters and I guess the rest of the world. Um, Now, I kind of thought when I came into recruitment would be loves, because for the most part we increase people's salaries and give them jobs. So in theory, I think I should be an extremely loved man. But at the same time, I understand that there is a lot of ghosting that goes on. There's no two ways about it. Now, unfortunately, it's just the reality of recruitment and networking. Everyone you reach out to is not going to get back to you. I reach out to a lot of people, a lot of head of designs, a lot of companies trying to recruit for them, and unfortunately, most don't get back to me either. So it happens to both sides. Now, if I was to reply to every single message that I get, because I do get a lot, probably because I do post a lot in general anyway. I like to write my articles. Then I wouldn't be able to service my clients, and then I'd have my clients complaining as well. So I do my best to reply to as much as possible, but it is genuinely physically impossible. I do get a lot of messages. Now, I'd always suggest following up once if for example you see a job, maybe even twice, and then if I can't get back to you, or maybe I have looked at your profile, and unfortunately, it's just in my working room. I do have a lot of other things to do, so I can't get back to everybody, unfortunately.
Cool.
But I'll also add, because ghosting doesn't just happen when it's at the first stage. Ghosting also happens after you may have interviewed. Now, if you have interviewed with somebody, then you should get feedback. You, as a recruiter, I can only give the feedback that the company gives me because you interviewed with the company, not me. So I'd always give that if I do get it. Otherwise, I will let you know that you didn't get a job, and that would be probably the extent of it. And hopefully, I can place you somewhere else because I do work in more or less similar roles each time.
Right, right. Great. Question from Jeffrey. Jeff, do you work in software engineering as well, or do you have a software developer branch within your company? Like, what roles do you personally recruit for?
Good question. So personally, I specialize in both UI UX design. I touch on user research as well, and also front end development. So that would include React and Angular, any front end role. So I'm kind of in I guess just in the overall front end of an application, and obviously research as well. So that's me personally. Every now and then, for example, I have placed a Java developer before, or let's say a full stack role. I'd probably still recruit for that. But when it comes to like sort of .NET and Java, to be honest, if other people have capacity to work the role, then they'll probably do that. And we do have our teams around about 20, and everyone specializes in different things. So we've got the requirements for most technologies and frameworks for sure. So yeah, if you are a software developer and you're looking, definitely hit me up as well.
Awesome. So 360-degree feedback is when you basically ask the person's peers for feedback on them, and then the person also has to self-evaluate. So, how would
Interesting.
you? What do you think about this practice where, like managers ask other people for feedback on the person, and then you ask the person to self-evaluate as well?
I'll be honest. In my personal experience, I think you mentioned that she's from England, and just maybe because I was in contract recruitment, so maybe this happens a lot more in permanent recruitment. But I was in contracts, and this doesn't. It's not something I've come across before. We do our best if when sending someone over, we do our best to get like a referral, even at the first stage. So we then would reach out to one of your managers, and maybe write like a nice write up about how good you did basically for them, and then send that alongside your CV. But that's all consensual, and it's not like a necessity or anything like that. So that's all I would do. So I'm probably the best I can answer that question, I'm afraid.
Awesome. Question from Jade. Does recruiting for design and development make you question your life choices?
Sometimes, if I'm not placing anybody, for sure. Um, um, it's a good question, and I do get this quite a lot from most people who haven't heard of recruitment or don't know much about the field. They're kind of like, don't you get like annoyed recruiting for these cool jobs all the time? Um, and there is a field for those who don't know called direct recruitment. So you're a recruiter recruiting for recruitment companies, which is like a weird
Ah,
matrix almost, where you're just it's kind of strange when you think about it, but at the end of the day, if you're a recruitment company, you should see the value in recruitment. So it kind of does make sense. In short, no. I did actually go to university for 4 months for computer science, and I did IT for 2 years before that. Now I'll be very transparent. When I did the IT course for 2 years, I actually got the best grade in the class, but that wasn't because of my extreme intellect and amazing computer skills. If you, I don't know much about how to code, and I'm not very good at it, and I never was. I was just pretty good at wording things, writing articles at the time, and I worked the classroom quite well. I was quite good at that, so I used to like talk to different people in the classroom and kind of help them help me. And I was quite good at that. So I kind of use people skills to get through. And then university, I didn't work out the same way. I had to actually do some work.
this is a good question. So a lot of designers have these non-disclosures where they cannot show the work they worked on. So how would you advise designers to approach that if you can't show your work,
Yeah, good
you know,
question.
because of non-disclosure? How do you show experience?
That is a very, very good question because this happened an awful lot when I used to work. 'Cause I used to work in London, recruiting for designers in London, and it was all finance. And finance, I would
Yeah,
imagine, maybe besides a few other industries, is you get NDAs a lot. Um, Now, unfortunately, there's not really a cheat code to this. You just can't show your portfolio. Now, a lot of the times you can offer to show it in the interview, for example, and show your work in the interview. I know a few people did that, whether they're allowed or not, I'm not sure. But kind of maybe just articulate it maybe note it down in your CV and or articulate it to the recruiter or the hiring manager, and that it's just just put the stuff that's not in your NDA on your portfolio.
Yeah, and I remember Famida had the same question, and she had a very interesting approach to solving this. So, if Famida, if you're still there, just put in a bit of a comment on how you've done that, because I know you've got some work that you couldn't show, but you found a way of explaining your process and your experience without showing the actual work. So it'd be great if you can post it. I'll put it up on the screen, and people can learn from that. Cool. So Isaac is
Good
saying,
questions.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, so Isaac is saying he has that problem where he worked in a lot of startups, and a lot of the work he did was under NDAs, and he needs to know how he can work around that. Question from Jade: how long would you say you spend reviewing someone's profile before deciding if they're a good fit or not?
That's a good question as well. That's a good. Thank you, Jade. Now it's difficult. When I first got into recruitment, you're not really used to looking at CVs all day, so it takes a long time. You have to kind of look at a CV for like sometimes 15, 20 minutes and just like study it and try and understand it. But when you look at CVs, it's like doing anything every single day for multiple years. You get pretty good at looking at things quite quickly. So now these days, I can look at a CV and see if you're worth if it's worth a conversation in like a minute. Like before I'm happy to set up a call with you and just kind of look at what you've done, um, and kind of look at your most recent roles. I don't have to use if you're like a super senior, I don't have to look at all your experience to have a conversation with you. I just have to
Right.
look at your most recent roles, to kind of look at what you've done, the companies you've worked for. If again, assuming a senior, for example, and I can do that all within a minute or a minute or two. Oh,
And do you
Harry.
guys have software that helps you filter the profiles you're looking for, or it's all
I don't know. Apart from just doing a search on LinkedIn, or we do have other software to help us find CVs, which gives us access to like GitHubs and also uses LinkedIn and stuff like that as well. Then no, I think like we tend to look at things ourselves because that's what we do.
question from Harry?
Yeah,
So you guys look at hundreds of CVs every week. What advice would you give job seekers to stand out from the crowd? Like,
that's very,
is it a cover letter? Is it calling a recruiter directly? I know Tom Scott used to say record like a short video clip and send that on LinkedIn instead. Like, what sort of tips would you give people?
Um, so that video clip thing, I'm not to say it can work, and you know I do. I'm quite a big fan of using unique ways to stand out and do things. I do that even with some of my posts, so I'm definitely a fan of it. And if you can think of a unique way, sure, 100% do it. But I think overall, it's just the that just quality. Make sure that there's your form. Make sure your CV is very easy to read. It's user experience. The same way. How do you make your application stand out? I kind of use the same methods. Just you make sure your CV is very easy to read. Sorry.
Cheers, cheers, cheers,
Cheers,
cheers.
cheers. Make sure your CV is easy to read. Your portfolio is nice and clear. I personally believe if you have a portfolio, you should have a website. Maybe that's not what everyone does, but I think personally, I think you should have a website. It just makes things a lot more clear and precise and a lot more neat and easy to read. And I think a portfolio is something you're going to have for a very long time. As long as you have a career essentially, unless you move out of design, I think you should have a website, and I think you should update it all the time. And then you again, you do have to just knock on doors. Once you see yourself as a product, upgrade your product, make it as good as possible, and then knock
Yeah,
on doors. That's essentially what you can do.
yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that, um, your selling yourself starts before the recruiter even finds you, right? So if you want to stand out as a designer, it's an always on endeavor. You're not going to really stand out if you're doing it in little moments of writing a cover letter or sending a video or those kind of things. I would say it's an always on endeavor. So how you conduct yourself online, on LinkedIn, Instagram, how you communicate with people when you meet them, how you network if you go to like UX meetups and things like that. And just how like if you message people on LinkedIn, even if you're not looking for work, Just connect with other designers, connect with hiring managers, help them find candidates if you're looking for them. So it's you stand out by doing all those things and not necessarily just recording a video and sending it or writing a great cover letter. Because maybe by then it's too late because anyone can write a cover letter, but not everyone can be an amazing designer, an amazing part of the community all the time.
I couldn't agree more. Honestly, maybe I'll cross off the question of cover letters. I'm not a massive fan of them personally. I don't tend to use them. I never made someone write a cover letter. Maybe a short summary, but not like a formal cover letter, like 2 or 3 bullet points just to kind of help send to the client and help sell you in. But I'm not a massive fan of a cover letter, for example. Maybe applying directly, it might be more useful, but when using a recruiter, I don't think you need to do that. We should probably have a good enough relationship with our client.
Right. So Famida, so I actually don't recall this conversation, but essentially what she's saying is a lot of her work is also NDA'd, and a way around this would be to white label the work. So you take out all the logos, you change the colors, and you focus on the UX and the problem you solved. Right. So for example, if you're working as a product designer in startups and you need to show the work, strip it down to the problem you solved and how you solved it, and present that as a UX case study. It's not really just about the aesthetics. So if you preface it by saying this is work is NDA'd, so I've whittled it down to focus on the actual problem we're solving and the journey we took on how to solve that problem, then I think that would suffice.
Oh, that's good advice. It sounds like you gave us some good advice back in the day.
It seems that
Well
way.
done.
So Jeffrey is asking if it's recorded. Absolutely. So this will be available on LinkedIn and YouTube as well afterwards, after this recording ends. So yeah, you can watch it anytime, anywhere. Mohammed is saying, Famida, are are there still things like the original idea that will be bad for the previous candidate, right? Do you know what he means?
Yeah.
Okay, so Jade is asking someone who wants to move to Dubai or Saudi, what questions would you recommend they ask the recruiter to help them make their decision? Really great
Very good
question.
question. Yeah, very good question. So there's two ways to break it down. There's the emotional element of moving to a different country and relocation, and then there's the functional elements, and the more practical elements, should I say. So you have to look at your situation. For example, ask how quick they would want you to move, because some people kind of have it in their mind, and I've had conversations where they would like, yeah, I can move in 6 months, but there's no point starting like anywhere. There's no point looking for a job now. Like maybe look a bit closer to the time, because realistically, if you get a job, no one's going to wait 6 months for you. So I definitely have a list of the practical questions which you would need to actually move, and then the emotional elements. Ask about what the lifestyle is. Ask about making friends and any worries and concerns that you may have emotionally, because it is an emotional process too, for sure. I definitely ask those sort of questions, and then the practical stuff. Maybe ask what the prices of Dubai, and people's personal experiences. I definitely ask about the relocation packages and kind of what they offer in terms of relocation. Anything around that, I definitely say, but you probably want to break it down to practical and the emotional elements.
I think this will be our last question because we are actually 1 minute away from an hour. Isaac is saying, how do you handle a product head of product design who lacks in their field, getting different instructions from the CEO and the designer? He's faced that problem. I guess I can try answer this. So I think it's important to realize that there's always something to learn from everyone, right? They might lack in one aspect, but they might be amazing in another aspect, right? So part of what the team is there for, part of why that head of product would have hired you, is for you to augment some of his weaknesses, his or her weaknesses, right? So it's not, don't look at it as a bad thing that head of design lacks in certain areas, because those are the places where you can step up and help to kind of plug those leaks, right? Essentially, part of your role as a team member is to make your head of product look good, right? And part of what his job is to make the working environment for the design team safe, productive, and to kind of enable you to do great work. So I would say, take it on the chin, do great work, and help that head of product kind of augment whatever he's weak at. If you happen to be great at it, then that's a good thing. That's how a team functions, right? We can't all be great at everything. I was actually told this once, right? Like if someone who ascends to a management position clearly has something about them that helped them to ascend to that level, right? So if they're a bad designer, I've had line managers who are terrible designers, but they were amazing managers. And because they were amazing managers, they allowed me to become a better designer. And I learned a lot from them that was above and beyond just design, because I was a designer. I learned different things about, that then helped me to ascend to that level, because what I was bad at, they were good at, and vice versa. Cool. Thanks, Asher. Any last words for us?
No, I'll just say it's been a pleasure. I was a bit, I wouldn't say nervous, but I was cautious. I was like, it's the unexpected. It's something I haven't done before. So no, I really appreciate everyone tuning in and listening, and some really amazing questions as well. And thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Yeah, I encourage you, start something for Discovered. Just have live streams. Your recruiters from different departments will go on, because I think people have questions to ask. Some of them will be easy, some of them will be tough to answer, but I think that's what makes these sessions amazing. So yeah, maybe be the pioneer, man. Set up Discovered Mina
Yeah.
live Q&As.
Maybe maybe I do have a microphone, so
You've got a microphone, you've got a handsome face.
yeah.
Good.
I appreciate. I talk. I talk to the big boss. I'll see what he says.
Yeah, man. See what you can do. Nice. Thanks everyone for logging on. I think this has been amazing. Thank you for all your questions. Feel free to reach out to Asher. He won't ghost you. Can't
I
promise.
promise. Yeah, I'll say just live on stream. I won't. Anyway, Isaac, I see.
Yeah,
Let's
if
let's,
you
let's
if
let's
you
chop it
use
up
the
next week.
promo code Matsi,
Yeah, please. Yeah, genuinely, I mean that. Yeah, I'll
use the
do my
promo
best.
code Matsi, and he will respond. He won't ghost.
There we go. There we go.
Amazing. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the stream now. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend. God bless. See you on the next one.
Thank you.